I know I had to notice that the computer was missing. And then you take it, so I ran over and was like.
Yeah, it's fine. You're good. We're good. Good to go. Oh, yeah. Then we'll know that
When D gets back, I'm gonna swap with you. I'm gonna let y'all, or like we can let D sit here. And I'm gonna take like the end, because we talked about like being able to see me a little bit better and hear me a little bit better.
What is this thing sitting right here?
That's called an owl. And so it, when people talk, we were broadcasting tonight.
Broadcast it to this screen?
Well, these guys are watching over here.
Oh my goodness.
And so we'll be able to put up the agenda, and then at times, I don't know if y'all are gonna split screen it or not, we'll be broadcasting. So if somebody's at home, they'll be able to watch us.
Oh, that would be good. See what happens, Betty? You missed one meeting.
Yeah. So, yeah, so tonight's the first night we're kind of test driving it.
Oh,
But, and within a meeting or two, we'll be pretty good at it. I bet you. No, we're ready. We're good to
all
go.
right, 6:30 on the nose. We'll call the regular meeting of the Easter Charter School Board order. Roll call.
Mrs. A. Ayala,
Present.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Here.
Mrs. Durbany,
Here.
Mrs. Hines, Mrs. Leyba,
All right, pledge of allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So do we have anybody sign up?
We do not.
Okay. Moving on to item D, approval of the agenda. You have an addition to the agenda?
We have an addition. We added number C in the action.
New business, yes, item C, approve access control upgrade.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the item C. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with the addition of item C as presented. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. A. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Durbany,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mrs. Leyba,
All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
All of the items in the consent agenda, I recommend approval for all the consents.
Second. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any questions or comments?
I just have one question. We talked about a new form for, are these the new forms?
Are the new forms?
there's only one listed that is on the new form.
Which one's that one?
That is, let me look here. That's Emily Headley.
But from this point forward, all hires should be using the new forms. If there's something on those new forms that y'all would like to see, or something that's not on there y'all would like to see, let me know. We'll see if we can make an adjustment on those forms. I got together with HR and a few others for us to develop that.
very clean. I like it.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Germany, Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mrs. Leba,
Hi.
Hi, G.
I mean.
Hi.
Me too.
All right, moving on. Minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting August 26th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the August 26th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes. Any questions, comments, or corrections? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Germany,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mrs. Leba,
Hi.
All right. Presentations.
All right, tonight we're gonna start with Dwayne Grassmick, our athletic director, is gonna do wanted to speak to us about new procedures at home athletic events. So Dwayne, if you'd like to come up to the hot seat here and talk to us about this.
So at our first home football game, it was against Mitchell, and we had some crowd issues. I'll tell you a story. It kind of led to me deciding I wanted to make some changes as far as that. We had a kid who we thought, after we did a bunch of investigation, went to TTA. He hit one of our junior high students. When I called Ken on Monday to talk about meeting with the kid, having him suspended from games, Ken did some research and found out that he wasn't even a TTA kid. So further investigation, we found out he was from Goal Academy. So he got involved in 3 fights that night, including hitting one of our junior high students. And that's finally when his friends got him out of the game. Had we known that he was a Goal Academy student, we could have handled the whole procedure differently. And that goes back to checking IDs, knowing who our kids are. So I met with Ms. Foxhoven, our principal. I met with Dr. Blanco, and we came up with the idea of using our student IDs at the junior high and high school for kids to get into the games. That way we identify them. If they lose an ID, if they don't have their ID, they either pay to get into the game or they get sent out. And that's for the junior high and high school students. But we still weren't able to account for all the littler kids that were running around playing football. You know, we have an elderly crowd, and we were concerned about the football being too near the bathrooms and people getting hurt when they were going back and forth from the game to the bathroom. So we decided that, and there's other schools that have done this in the past, that we're going to make 6th graders and below have a parent, guardian, or an adult who's going to be responsible for them. And then if we have an issue with that child, we'll ask them who they're with and make them go sit with their parent or guardian, whatever the case may be. Or if the parent comes, drops them off, and leaves them behind, then we're going to ask them to go ahead and leave the football field. We'll make sure they call and get a ride, and then they won't be allowed to be unsupervised at the football game anymore. We feel like this will help a lot with the discipline and the crowd control during the game. That way we're not trying to fight these kids and try to control the junior high and the high school kids and try to supervise the crowd, the adults during the game. There's a lot going on during a football game. So we felt that this procedure would help us with crowd control to a point where we actually can turn over supervision to the parents, guardians, and let them handle the younger kids, where I know all the junior high and high school kids. I can control that. The other administrators can control that. So that's why I wrote up that letter, and I'll answer any questions you guys have about that letter or any procedure at this point. And then I'll send out a mass letter tomorrow to all the parents, get it on Facebook. That way they know about the new procedures. And that way we've already talked to our kids about making sure they show up to our games with their IDs.
And it's just gonna be just for football?
It'll be for any event that we charge a gate for. So volleyball, football, basketball, baseball, those would be the ones, those are the ones we charge gate for. But it'll still help with crowd control as far as, you know, we don't charge for JV football, but they still need to come and have a supervision there with them. We can ask them to leave or go sit with their parents if they get out of control.
Do the students have to show their ID every other place and any other time?
Not that I know of. I know there's an ID system that we've talked about implementing, that's down the road where they actually would have to swipe to come into the game. So those are things that we can look at in the future. Right now, for crowd control and to make sure that we don't let a kid like that Goal Academy kid back in and cause all the havoc that he caused that night, we feel the ID system is the best way to check and make sure we're controlling who's coming into the game.
Well, it kind of gives purpose to the ID now, you know, if we start asking for it, hopefully the students will start carrying their IDs with them, so.
Well, I noticed leaving the football games, that concession area, you have your crowd that moves at their own well-earned pace. And then you have the kids that just, I'm younger and I don't get out of the way fast enough for some of those kids. So I'm always concerned that they're just gonna, you know, pile into the back of someone and lose their balance. It's tough getting out of the game, so it's good that we're addressing it. Do you think this is gonna, and I'm gonna ask the question, but I know the answer. Do you think this will hurt our attendance at any of our activities?
No, I don't. I mean, we allow our students in for free, so what it might do is if the kid really wants to see the game, maybe his parents will come along with them. Maybe we'll have bigger crowds, but it won't hurt the crowd. We had the game Saturday with TCA, and it was a Saturday afternoon game. It wasn't as big a crowd. We still had a good draw. And we kind of looked at implementing, we did have kids show IDs for that game just to kind of get the practice for our people running the gates, and there was no issues. We didn't have all the kids running around up on top. We didn't have the 1,000 kids on each grass side of the stadium who were playing football. So now Friday night games are different, and the next game we're going to do this for football will be homecoming, which is another beast all within itself. But we feel like it'll help with crowd control. We're always going to have issues, but we feel like if we can control some things, it'll help us from those bigger problems like the kid who wanted to fight all night.
We're gonna let all the students know this, I take it as well.
Yep,
We'll get that.
it'll go out to everybody. We've been putting it in the announcements for the high school. I'm gonna send out a letter to give it to all the principals at all the buildings, that way they can disperse it. So we're gonna start it Thursday with our volleyball game versus Manitou Springs. That'll be the first time we have a big crowd. So and I'll be around the gate to make sure the kids don't sneak by, and we're gonna monitor the doors in the gym, make sure kids aren't letting other kids in, which happens. It happens a lot. We're gonna try to be more proactive and try to get the kids to understand this is gonna be the way it's gonna be from now on.
Was the student injured and got hit?
Huh?
Was the student?
No, good for him. He came and found the teacher right away. We handled it. And he actually filed a complaint with the police, so.
How does this help negate the crowd that plays football outside the gym during volleyball games?
We'll do a better job of getting out there and chasing them off. Our gatekeepers have always complained about too much in and out traffic. If the younger kids are with the supervised adults, there won't be the in and out because it'll be impossible for them to get back in.
Yeah, they go out without.
So they go out, they're done for the night.
Okay.
Can I ask a question not related to crowd control?
Sure.
What platform are we going to be streaming our games on? Is it going to still be NFHS? We just had technical difficulties.
Yes, we're having technical problems. We're hoping it'll be fixed for homecoming.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, we're just kind of a presentation procedures.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Grasmick?
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dwayne.
Okay.
I can make Karen,
All right.
write your name down, really appreciate it.
All right, moving on to our next presentation, transportation update.
Naomi's gonna give us an update now over transportation. They just finished a CDE review that I think she's gonna talk about pretty extensively.
Yes, we just had our CDE review on September 11th, and we are one of 2 districts in the state of Colorado that passed on our first try.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Congrats.
To Javier, if you guys would like to hear what we have to say to how he got us there.
Sure. Yeah, tell Javier. We can get you a chair out here if you'd like.
When I came in, right away, I joined the TAC committee with CDE, was the Transportation Advisory Council meeting. And I started taking in information that we needed for our reviews or what we needed to be in compliance for our department. And I got the box of files I got when I started, and I started going through what we needed, what they were gonna look into. And I started filing them by year and by vehicle. Right now, I have them separated in 3 different files: PM inspections, annuals, and work orders. When they come through to look at that, they look for, are we getting our inspections done to transport students? Are we keeping our maintenance up to date?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Keeping our maintenance up to date and all around making sure the buses are good to transport the students. And he came in, he looked at our files, he chose a couple buses to look at. He stepped up on there, gave us some advice on some things that we can do, but something they recommend, but we wouldn't have to do, but we're gonna probably take a look at it to following whatever they recommend.
Awesome. And so he goes through all the files.
Yep, he goes through all the files that we have in the past 2 years. And that would have been just about when I started till now. I got basically all those files all up to date, all files past 7 years I got on the side for archives, just in case something were to happen federally. So if they were to come in, I filed those all, so if something were to happen, they can come in, they can look at what they need to, and they can get right back out, and make it a quick process for them.
Did he have some good recommendations for y'all?
He did.
Yeah.
So, did you learn a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I learned a lot, actually.
How long was he in?
He was here
Half
for,
the day.
yeah.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to put those files in order?
It took me a good 4 months.
Wow. Thank you for your hard work. Do we have any other updates?
Yes, and I just want to thank you all for approving our new buses. Our sped bus, we're looking at maybe January of 25, and our mini, probably about a year.
You revisited today, you're telling me that we need the mini pretty bad.
We need the mini really bad. Right now, we have 2 of them. There's so many activities going on, school, sports, just activities just throughout the whole schools, and it's really important. So I hope they get it done sooner. That would be nice. And maybe a new one next year would also.
I told Naomi and Javier today that in the new way that we will be building the budget, that we'll be meeting with Heather and the other day Javier and I spoke about many years down the road, we want to know what buses we want to buy so we can get those in the budget early. And then the second the budget's approved, we're gonna get those things supported.
That'll be good.
Awesome.
All I have for you guys.
All right.
Any questions or comments for the transportation team? Thank you.
Thank you.
So you know how when you go to a concert, they start with the
Naomi.
the lower bands and then work up to the highlight show, the big show?
Oh, is this the main entertainment?
The main entertainment, the big show is now. I'm embarrassing him.
Thank you very much.
Board, I think y'all met Dr. Sam Schneider before, and Dr. Schneider was here most of the day and spent the day at the intermediate school with Claudia and her leadership team. And so he has, and there will be a presentation right behind us that he will be working from. So he's going to tell you about what we've been doing over the past months and years and where we're going in the future. So with that said, Sam, I'll turn it all over to you.
Well, I was lucky enough to go to the Taylor Swift Eras tour when it was in Denver, and I assure you that despite that introduction, I'm not Taylor Swift. I wish I was Taylor Swift, and that's not the situation. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I also made a huge mistake. I am a big Cincinnati Bengals fan, and they're playing on Monday Night Football right now. That's not the mistake. The mistake is if I was going to wear my Cincinnati Bengals jersey to a board meeting, this is the right one.
Yes.
Because they're literally tigers and
they're
black
orange.
and orange.
Black and
So
orange.
that was my big
That's a
mistake.
missed opportunity.
You could have pulled it off.
I could have been wearing my Joe Burrow jersey right underneath my jacket tonight. So I'm sorry that you don't get to see that, but I'll put it on as soon as I get back to the hotel room.
That's right.
I'm really excited to be here with you all tonight and give you some, I think some really encouraging updates on where your accountability status is at. There's some news that is a little unfortunate, but overall there's a lot of positive trends that I'm really excited to share with you all tonight. And you are on stop number 3 of 6 for me, this state board or this local board meeting tour that I'm going. In case you don't remember, let me just reintroduce myself. I have 2 roles that I play with the East Ontario School District in my role at the State Department of Education. I am the district's support lead, and that is a role that several of us at the State Department of Ed have, where we have a caseload of school districts across the state, and we get to sort of act as the CDE point of contact, or almost like an air traffic controller for the various improvements that are going on in a school district. So I am the point of contact for East Ontario School District, and I also have this other role as the transformation manager for Hunter Intermediate. So that's a role that I play for schools that are on year 3 or later of the accountability clock, which I will clarify a little bit later in this presentation. And so I am Hunter Intermediate's transformation manager is what we call it. And of course, you can see the smiley face with the hat up there in the top right, just to indicate that I wear multiple hats when I'm in a school district. Just to walk you through kind of where I'm going to head tonight, I'm going to give you kind of a reorientation to our state accountability system. I'll give you a brief update on East Ontario's progress and current performance. And we'll talk about some of the immediate next steps for Lahonta Intermediate since they have reached year 5 of the accountability clock. We will close out with some good amount of time for Q&A. I prefer that you ask a ton of questions tonight because there's a lot of misconceptions about some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight that it is really helpful for the community to get answers to. That way they know what they can expect, and more importantly, they can know what they won't expect to happen, which is often a question of anxiety that comes up for staff and students within these accountability contexts. So let's talk a little bit about the accountability frameworks in the state of Colorado, because if you're not me, you probably don't spend all day thinking about these things. So it's helpful to have a little bit of a refresher. So we have 3 different types of indicators that produce our school performance frameworks in the state of Colorado. We have academic achievement, academic growth, and then post-secondary and workforce readiness. And depending on whether you're an elementary or middle school, or a high school or a district, those things are weighted differently for each of those levels. So you can see that no matter which level you're looking at though, that yellow category of academic growth, that's always going to be weighted most heavily. I'm going to talk more about these indicators in just a minute, but really quick, I want to just give you some updates on some of the new parts of these frameworks this year. Number 1, we've reintroduced science achievement into our frameworks. That is only tested in grades 5, 8, and 11. So you won't ever see growth because we can't measure a student's growth from 5th to 8th grade science or 8th to 11th grade science. And then something you'll see new next year is a new concept called on-track growth. And then another new thing that is a very nerdy shift to this year's framework is we've renormed the state's PSAT, SAT scores. You can see that in the graphic with the way the blue, green, and yellow lines have shifted down for this year. No, we haven't changed the expectations for what different levels of scoring are. What happened was we transitioned to a purely online administration of the PSAT and SAT this year. What ended up happening was there was enough of a difference in last year's testing and this year's testing across the nation as a whole, not just in Colorado, that there was a need to redefine, well, what is this level of performance? What is this level of performance? Because everybody's scores shifted down across the nation. But that won't impact too many things we're going to share about tonight. Just to go a little deeper on each of those indicators, academic achievement measures the extent to which students are at grade level. Academic growth measures how much progress a student makes in a given year. It's measured by this really weird metric called MGP, which is median growth percentile. And it's a number between 1 and 99. If you're at 50, that's what we consider about 1 year's growth. So above 50 is more than a year's growth. And if you go really far above, it's obviously like way more than a year's growth. But if you're below 50, it's considered less than a year's growth. And then over on the right side of the screen, you can see how we measure post-secondary and workforce readiness. This includes things like graduation rate, dropout rate, matriculation rate. Matriculation is a really weird word that just means, what are you moving on to after high school? Are you joining the military? Are you going to a 2-year institution or a 4-year institution? And yes, even if you achieve a CTE credential, so some sort of a workplace certificate, that also counts as matriculation. None of those options I just named count more than others. What's important is that students have some sort of option that they're matriculating to. So but all of those roll up into one score we give a school, and that score is indicated as either performance at the highest level, improvement, the second highest level, and you can see the bottom 2 levels of performance are what we term as on the clock for our state accountability system. So the second lowest is priority improvement, and then the lowest is called turnaround status. It's really important to note that when you are on the clock for state accountability, if you're there for more than a year, you then have to be above it for 2 consecutive years to get off the clock. I'll talk about that more in just a second. It's kind of hard to think about and wrap your head around when you don't have some actual schools and numbers in front of you. And then next up on the screen is a really overwhelming graphic, but what this is showing you is when schools reach year 4 on the accountability clock, so when they've been at that orange or red level of performance for 4 consecutive years, you can see on the left side of the screen, we start to sort of pick up some actions we start to take at the state just to sort of intervene and support as we can. But that red area that I've highlighted is the work of year 5, which is what we'll talk about with La Junta Intermediate in just a moment. In year 5, schools are required to appear before the State Board of Education, and the State Board of Education will direct 1 of 5 actions to the school district to try to improve the school. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those processes a little later on. You can see there's a big bubble underneath of the hearing block in the middle of the screen. And it's important to note here that the board doesn't just make a unilateral decision about what the school should do. The school and the district will propose what they should do. They also have what's called a state review panel report, which will make recommendations about what they should do. And the community, in this case, the community here at La Junta, will also get a weigh in through public comment about what should be done to improve the school. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of those options that the state board can actually direct. Well, on the right side of the screen, you can see 2 options that aren't very popular: closing the school and converting the school to a charter school. The 3 options on the left, which I would argue are slightly more common, are this idea of full or partial management, which is in the light blue, converting to a community school, or having the school become what's called an innovation school. An innovation school is where the school gets waivers from certain district or state policies. There's a voting process that staff have to participate in, as well as this local board would also participate in. And then there's an approval of that innovation plan. This is a really common option in large school districts, where one school among many is trying to innovate and do things different from the way the rest of the district is doing them. The community school model is an interesting one, and it's one of the newest options that we have on there. It only came about from a legislative bill a couple of years ago. And basically what it has happened is the school will have lots of extended opportunities for families and students to get additional supports. And it's an option that's really great when there's a really high community need for resources that aren't academic. So maybe it's like some parental education courses or access to food banks, things like that. And again, that option on the left is actually the one that the state review panel recommended for La Junta Intermediate. It's one that the district is prepared to propose and present to the State Board of Education, which will be in February of this year. So, but before we get into some of those details, let's actually talk about some of the positive trends in performance that we were able to see from last year's performance frameworks to this year's. Up on the screen, you can see how each school in East Otero moved from 2023 to 2024. There's one error I will call out, and it's where I'd also like to start our conversation. La Junta Intermediate has been at that red level for several years, and I incorrectly left them at the red level on this graphic. They've actually moved up to the orange priority improvement level. You can also see
for a second.
Yes. They're not the only ones. The district performance as a whole also moved from red up to orange. And the high school moved from orange up to yellow. Schools that we had a framework for in 2023 moved up one level for 2024. So overall, the district earned 3.4% more points for their overall score. There were several indicators that moved up in academic growth across the board. And we achieved an exceeds rating. So you can get green, which is proficient, but we got an exceeds or blue rating for our dropout rate here in East Otero. It got down to 0.4%. So that's a really, really big celebration. And it's a testament, not just to the work of the high school and Jen, which is obviously something we want to celebrate, but also to Ken and everyone that works on post-secondary work. And then also, like, let's be real, like our kindergarten teachers, our first grade teachers, they all have a role that is part of that dropout rate that we eventually get to at the end of a student's K-12. So where does that leave us? Well, what it leaves us with is the district is in year 2, the accountability clock, which means we'll have to get 2 years in a row above the orange level to get the district on the clock. Nothing happens in year 2. There's no requirements that are additional, but that does mean I get to be the support leader. I get to help out with East Otero a little bit more, which I think Reese and I are totally fine.
That's exactly right.
La Junta Intermediate does move to year 5 of the accountability clock. Well, let's talk a little bit about how some of those metrics broke down a little bit more. So first, if you'll look, La Junta Intermediate has increased by 9% as a school. So even though they're still on the accountability clock, there's a lot of positive momentum at the campus that we can grasp onto and build an improvement plan around. And then you can also see that the district's point, the 3% increase that's up there. For East Otero as a school district, I already mentioned some of these improvements, but several indicators went up in academic achievement and academic growth. And then we also see this trend in 3rd grade, that there's this particular highlight that 3rd grade students are performing at that does not meet its level in both ELA and math. And then I already mentioned this, but there's some good celebrations around some of the post-secondary readiness metrics in both the dropout rate as well as the, I think, oh yeah, it moved from 1.2% down to 0.4%. For La Junta Intermediate, students are still not yet making at least a year's growth. They moved several indicators up into the approaching category, which is around like a 35 MGP. If you remember back a couple slides, I shared that a 50 MGP is about a year's growth. So we've moved up considerably from where we were at, but we still have more room to grow in terms of getting at least a year's growth. Also, like if we have students that are performing below grade level, having way more than a year's growth is the way we will catch them up. Having 1 year's growth when you're below grade level isn't enough to get you back to where we want to.
And when you're looking at growth, you're looking at, for instance, we'll go back here. You look at the CMAS score from 2023 compared to that same student's CMAS score in 2024, correct?
Yep.
And there's been plenty of research to show that in economically lower areas, we have less growth because these students don't have as much opportunity. and to go see things during the summer or have summer tutoring programs during the summer. So it's tough for our area. And this is nationwide. I'm not just talking about Colorado. This is nationwide. The poorer areas typically do worse on growth than more financially stable areas or advanced areas. Also on growth, at the high school level, you look at PSAT to SAT scores for growth, correct?
Mhm.
And the SAT people themselves and their in some of their writings will tell you that that's not an accurate measurement of growth. They'll tell you if you want to truly look at growth using the SAT or PSAT, that you should go PSAT early, PSAT late. So again, this is a tough growth metric. I get it. I know the game. I know the game we have to play, and we'll play that game. But I will tell y'all, it's just tougher in our own region to hit some of these standards than it is in other regions.
Yeah, it can be challenging, and I'll also name like La Junta Intermediate and the district as a whole is already showing what's possible. Like some of those big jumps in growth are not easy to come by. And so I think there's a lot of proof points already here of like what good things are going on, and will hopefully continue to expand.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit now and dive deeper into some of those accountability actions I mentioned moving forward, and how CDE will support La Junta Intermediate and the school district. So as I mentioned, we'll be moving to a year 5 hearing, which will be in February for La Junta Intermediate. That exact date we're actually able to pin down today will be February 12th in Denver. And it's very common for community members and school board members to be present for those and be a voice of support. Doesn't mean all of you need to come, but I would highly recommend sending at least one of you as a representative. Our state board members love to hear from local board members and their perspective of what's going on and what their support for the school's plan looks like. So that means I'll be working with La Junta Intermediate closely this year, as I did today, to start to put forth a plan of, well, what is the next couple of years going to look like? What are we going to do to improve? So there's a couple of parts to this. As I mentioned, there's these 5 options. As of now, our plan, and the state review panel reinforces this and supports this, is to move forward and propose partial management of La Junta Intermediate. That is a very loaded phrase that might sound a little nerve-wracking. It doesn't mean that an organization is going to come in and tell Reese or you all or the school exactly what to do in every facet of what they do. What it means is they'll have some specific authorities over a couple of focus areas to really help the school get better at the things it's already working on and getting better at. It's not very different from the relationship with the University of Virginia that's already in place, where there's some outside help to think through the strategies that the school is trying to implement and how they can do even better at what they're currently doing. A little bit more information about what the hearing will look like. Our state board is a 9-member board. They are currently a very technically versed board, so they have a lot of education background themselves, but we do have November elections coming up in the next couple of weeks, which means our board could shift a little bit. And that doesn't mean that there will be any big shift in decision-making. It just means that we might not be able to predict exactly what those state board members might think or feel about La Junta Intermediate's plan. However, in the most recent hearings we've had in the last year, we've seen pretty consistent support from both Democratic and Republican candidates on the state board. And so I don't think that there would be any big fireworks that might come from that state board hearing, especially when I know that Reese and Claudia and the team are going to be really well prepared and going to put forward a really strong plan. These hearings are quasi-judicial, which means state board members won't be able to come out and visit with you all. They can only review the evidence and the documents that are submitted as part of the hearing process. And then finally, at the end of that process, where I will present, Reese and Claudia and Gina will present, and then there'll be some Q&A with the state board. They'll eventually vote to approve the plan and say, here's the directed action, implement your partial management plan with whoever your partial manager is, and we wish you luck in being successful with that. They'll also include in that some return terms. So they'll say, If you're still at this level 2 years from now, we want you to come back to the state board, share some updates, and share what else you might need in order to have successful implementation. The other element of this is the commissioner's visit. So our commissioner, Susanna Cordova, will also plan to come out to East Ontario School District in January, where she'll hear from Claudia and Reese about some of the plans that they'll put together. And it's her goal at this time to be able to learn more about the context here in East Ontario and then be able to communicate that clearly to the state board to say, this is what they're working on. These are the obstacles they're facing. And so she'll be here for a good half day where they're going to do some classroom visits, talk through the plan, and do some Q&A with the commissioner. And our commissioner is a former superintendent. She was actually the superintendent in Denver Public Schools when I worked at Denver Public Schools Central Office. So I always accidentally call her Superintendent Susanna Cordova, but I can speak to the fact that she's actually done this work. She's been a part of turnaround schools and improvement efforts like this, and she's been a part of some of these state board hearings, and she knows the realities that come with that, and that it's possible to get off the clock and make some of the improvements that we know are possible. And then if you're curious, I just want to highlight that the state review panel did not recommend any of the other pathways. So they did not recommend closure. They did not recommend converting it to a charter school, didn't recommend innovation status or community schools. They recommended this idea of an external partial manager and named it could be helpful to have some extra supports around leadership development from that partner, school improvement planning and monitoring, and then some other different instructional improvement strategies. Those are pretty common focus areas for a lot of partial manager relationships. And there's a lot of different organizations we might consider as a partial manager for La Junta Intermediate, one of which could be UVA. So that's who they're currently working with on some of this implementation work. There's a real possibility that UVA would be a great partial manager. There's also a couple of organizations that Reese and Claudia and I are going to do what I call speed dating with to sort of evaluate like who else would be a good fit. One of those, if you want to do your own independent research, is an organization called TNTP, who has a partial management relationship with Aguilar School District, as well as Adams 14 School District, and with Aurora Public Schools. And then another organization that Reese and Claudia and I will be meeting with is the Relay Graduate School of Education, who has a long-standing relationship with Pueblo schools and has actually had success in that work with both Minnequaw Elementary, if you've read some of the news articles about them and the improvements they've made, as well as Central High School. They also have a middle school that's currently still doing some of this work in Pueblo with Relay as their partner.
And Sammy, all these partners are familiar with the program that we're in, UVA program.
Yeah.
And they would help us facilitate our UVA work as well.
Yeah, there's an ideal world where UVA is the partner and that reduces the number of cooks in the kitchen. But there's also a lot of success stories where Relay has come in the early stages, the partial manager layers on top, and then after Relay moves on, or after UVA moves on, the partial manager helps to continue some of that work or deepen it. Because while UVA is a wonderful organization, they can't be everything to everybody. And so these partial managers often have like a really specialized focus on improvement efforts. Oops. So this is just a general lay of the land of what some of this will look like. You can see I have the commissioner visit in the wrong part. It will not be next month in November. It'll be in January, which is good because I couldn't fit that many bubbles under January anyway. So January is going to be busy for us. You can also see January is when we will invite public comment. That'll be an electronic survey you can share with your community. And I shared with the La Junta Intermediate team today. I think it'd be great to have as many voices share their support for La Junta Intermediate from La Junta as possible. So we'd like you all to submit public comment. We'd love parents and family members to submit that public comment. We mentioned today probably soliciting some support from previous partners who have helped La Junta Intermediate. So they've had GSN coaches that have had a lot of say here and work here and can speak to the work that's going on, but we want to try to fill as much public comment as we can. That way the state board really feels like the public has been very engaged on the work that's going on here and what it can look like moving forward. You can also see that I'll be working with Reese and Claudia and Gina to put together a plan that we'll share with the state board over the next several months. That's the big long bar down there at the bottom. And then last and certainly not least, we currently have received some easy grant funding in East Otero to support the University of Virginia partnership. Reese and I are going to be strategizing in the next month about what that next round of easy grant funds looks like. The easy grant is specifically used to support districts like East Otero in getting the extra supports they need to enact the improvements that they've designed. So Reese and I have talked about potentially getting some funding for some district strategic planning. It's really helpful for a board like yourselves to have a multi-year district strategic plan that you can point to is this is the roadmap we expect you to implement. It's a great accountability tool for local boards. We'll also apply in what's called accountability pathways. So that way, whatever partial manager relationship we pursue with La Junta Intermediate, we'll be able to fund at least part of that relationship because they can be expensive contracts. And we want to try to support those contracts fiscally. And then the last bullet up there is some board services work. This is a really common area for a lot of school districts that are lower performing to pursue. This is basically like professional learning for you as board members. I don't know about you, but I don't think it's really common for board members to come into their position and be handed a technical manual or a playbook that's like, here's how you board member. That's not common. And so that's a support we offer at CDE that I think could be of great interest to you all in terms of like, what do high functioning boards do? How do they get results? How do they work with superintendents and executive leadership teams? And so I'll leave you all before we go to some Q&A. Just because folks often ask, like, what are some recommendations? What are some focus areas you'd have us keep our eyes on? And I would just say, one, as a board and as a leadership team in East Otero, continue to focus on building some of that district infrastructure for improvement. So that means continuing and supporting the work of the UVA partnership. We have seen across Colorado over the years that partnership pay off for school districts in the long run. And then also I'd strongly encourage you to stay in touch with Reese about pursuing the board services work. I think you all would find it really interesting, and I think it would support you in helping to lead East Otero to even greater heights. And then probably my biggest thing I'll always hang my hat on is just continue to support instructional transformation efforts. So I know that we've adopted 4 years ago English language arts curriculum. I would say like continue to do that for mathematics, which I know the team is exploring currently to update that. I think that'll go a really long ways for the improvements we're trying to make. And then just always consider new innovative practices, but also just anything that's capacity building in nature. Leadership is a very lonely position in education, and any experience that your principals and even Reese can have to be able to continue to grow and practice and learn about things out in the field. That's something we're all continuously learning no matter what role we reach. And so any support you all can offer to that is really, really helpful for district leaders here in East Otero. And I'll pause right there because I went pretty fast. I can go back to any slides you want me to go back to, and I'd love to take some questions from you all this time.
If you go back one slide while they're thinking about a question, I want to talk about some of these. As y'all know, on October the 1st, we're going to have our phase 5 training with Henry. And I'm not sure if a CASB representative is going to be there at that. But when Stacy and I and Dee, I know Dee's up here, but we're at our Saturday training, we talked to Matt and Matt Cook. And we're already scheduling Matt to come down here and do multiple team trainings for the board. I also appreciate what you said about strategic planning. I think that would be a next step that maybe we can get CASB, or you and I talked about 2 different entities. I've worked with both of those entities, Empower Education and CEI.
Yeah.
I forget what CEI stands for.
Colorado Education Initiative.
Yes, and so I think both of those are great groups that could help us build as a board our strategic plan, you know, which would look out for 5 years and say, this is where we want to go for the next 5 years. So just those alone, and building capacity and curriculum and instruction, which we'll actually be talking about here in just a little while, I think is all really good focuses.
I also want to share, between Reese and I, we've thrown several organizations' names in, right? Colorado Education Initiative, Empower Schools, Relay Graduate School of Education, UVA, TNTB. I just want to name all 5 of those partnerships are partnerships that apply to us at the State Department of Education every year to be approved partners for this work. So they apply to be a provider of district strategic planning. And through their application process, we at the state vet them to say, yes, this is a CDE approved provider. In a lot of cases, many of those partnerships we're naming tonight are not just approved, they're approved with distinction. So these are really strong partners that have a demonstrated track record of success. This isn't just like Uncle Joe's Consulting that's coming in to support your schools and your folks. These are really high quality organizations that have a track record of doing great work, not just across the country, but in Colorado specific context.
Sam, can I mention something? Yeah. That's on one of your first slides where it talked about third grade. Actually, a correction there was something we looked at today was third grade achievement is consistently stronger than the other grade levels.
I must have had that from the wrong slide deck.
Yeah. So I just wanted, not just because they're here, but also.
Totally not cool. As I said it, I've studied the data a lot too. As I said it, I was like, that's not right. But I said it because, whatever you put on the slide, I'll read it, I guess.
Speaking of that, Claudia, if you work at the intermediate school, would you raise your hand, please? Thank y'all so much.
The 9% improvement, that's a very big jump. I probably should go do some homework and study where that ranks in terms of other schools across the state and the jumps they made. I will say that a school district had a similar jump and they were in the top third of frameworks across the state. I think it was like 33rd out of 185 frameworks I looked at. 9% is probably enough to be in that realm of discussion, which means they would be in like the top 18% of improved schools or districts last year, which is just a great celebration.
That is.
Can I ask a question? Or
Dee,
is somebody else going first?
You got it.
no, you got it.
Okay. First, Sam, thank you so much for the presentation. I found it thorough and easy to follow. One of the questions I had was what, if any, impact will the suggestions from the accountability task force have on schools that are on the clock, if any of those are adopted?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those of you who don't know, we have something called the 1241 task force that is currently looking at revisions to different parts of our Colorado accountability system. I am trying to pay attention from a distance. I will tune in via Zoom and listen to their conversations as best I can, but I'm not as intimately well versed in their report as I should be. I will say this. Their considerations are mostly geared right now towards what data points go into the framework than they are into what are the options when you reach year 5. They are thinking far more about the structure of the performance frameworks than the actual end of clock processes themselves. So I would say that there's a chance that that recommendation will invite more study and revision of the end of clock process down the road. But there won't be a recommendation that comes forward in November or December that will throw a stick in the anthill of our plan for February. It'll definitely come after that. Now, if La Junta Intermediate were to remain on the clock, they have to come for a hearing in 2028. I hope we'll change things by then, because you know what? Our Colorado schooling system doesn't look the way that it looked in 2009 when the Colorado Accountability Act was passed. So I would hope we would have some updates by then, but the recommendations of the task force that will come in December should not impact this hearing that will be in February of 2025. Does that answer your question, Madam President?
Yes, thank you. Also, so we're putting together our basically our body of evidence for the State Board of Education for that presentation in February. Is that a public, I don't know what you would call it altogether, a packet, or is that just for the board, or will like our community be able to review it as well, to go through it, even though they're part of it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So number one, it will eventually be a completely public document. It'll be submitted via board docs 2 weeks before the state board hearing. So it'll be on February 12th, which means I think it'll officially be public probably like February 4th or 3rd. If I have my calendar memorized, which I shouldn't, but I think I might. So that will be officially public when it's submitted via board docs to the State Board of Education. However, I know Claudia and the team have some homework from me today to begin thinking about how do you engage your stakeholders now. We obviously want public comment, but they're also thinking through how are we going to engage our parents and our families at La Junta Intermediate in the next few weeks to try to get some of their input and thinking around things. So there's informal community involvement that will go into this, and it will likely be a transparent process, and also it will definitely be a formal transparent process when it's submitted via board docs 2 weeks prior to the hearing.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
not familiar with, are you finished, Steve?
I had one more question.
Okay.
And if you said this in the slides, I'm sorry, I was cutting in and out just a little bit, but so I know we have to stay in this part, I forgot what it's called, priority improvement for 2 years. What happens if we go back one?
If you slide down to red or stay in orange, it's not like red gets you 2 years and orange gets you 1 year. Like they count for 1 year. So if you're in orange, you move forward 1 year on the clock. When you go up a level, so let's say Claudia and the team are, they get some extra success, right? And they have really a great outcome next year, and they end up moving up to yellow this time next year. They would be called year 5 on watch. And then if they got yellow again the next year, the clock's reset. It's back to 0. They're not even on the clock, right? If they get to yellow next year and then the following year they drop down to orange or red, they would go to year 6. So when you have that on watch here, it just pauses you moving forward for 1 year. So it just like will delay any sort of further state directed action. We had 1 here and then 1 back there.
Go ahead.
I was wondering about the 3rd grade data. Since it's the first time that they take that assessment, how do you measure their growth? Is it based on the previous year's 3rd graders?
Yeah, I was trying to save some of my time and I left that detail out. But academic growth only includes grades 4 through 8 for CMAS. So 3rd grade, 3rd grade's not included in academic growth. So it's not part of our frameworks, only academic achievement.
Okay, thank you.
You were mentioning all the organizations that are part of the partial management, and I'm not familiar with any of them, but they are experts in like a district of on-sites.
I would say they're all experts in a particular aspect of instructional transformation, and almost all of them work in very diverse contexts. For example, TNTP has experience working with a district like Aguilar, which obviously Aguilar is more similar to you than Aurora is, but they also work with Aurora. These organizations, I think, are often denoted as world-class because their strategies and efforts don't just work in a rural setting or an urban setting, they work across settings because we know there's some practices that are good for kids no matter where they're from. So we've found that we don't have them on our advisory list if they are unique by a setting, because usually that puts up a red flag of oh, that might mean you have different expectations for students from a rural setting versus an urban setting versus a suburban setting. And I think a great organization has high expectations for all students, no matter where they're located.
If we are on yellow and we get yellow again, then you say we're going to year 5 on watch. And if we stay in yellow, then we're off the clock. So if we can do that consistently for 3 years.
Just 2.
Just 2.
Yep, you're in orange now for La Junta Intermediate. If they move up to yellow and then get yellow one more time, you won't see me at all.
what if we go from, and this is just because I'm that person, if we go yellow 2 times in a row, then we're off,
Yeah,
and then something happens.
can you come back down? It'll be year 1.
So we don't get a pass, we don't get a break, we just get to start.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
that's not in the plan.
yeah, it's not in the plan, it's not part of what's gonna happen, right? But,
That's not the plan, but I have to ask anyway.
right, and I think this is also why I often promote work like the UVA partnership. Because what it does is it decreases the likelihood that success is a flash in the pan. Because just like infrastructure for our roads and our cities, improvement infrastructure at a district level takes time to maintain. It's a routine that people like Reese and people in Reese's position have to work to establish within an organization. It's a routine people have to get used to and not feel nervous about, because it's continuous improvement, it's accountability, and it's trying to level up expectations for everybody.
Can we get a copy of this one?
Yeah, and I think they have a copy. Yeah.
Actually, it's attached to your agenda.
It's not.
Oh, I thought it was.
I'll
Can I
email
request
them.
Yes,
Going forward, we
yeah.
And we can keep asking questions. I just want to make sure you have time to write down my email and number too, in case that's something you'd like to utilize moving forward.
In the grand scheme of things, I know that you said anything moving toward improvement or innovative ideas with personnel and things are always a good idea. Later in our agenda, we're gonna get to this, but I'm just gonna ask you point blank, do you believe a chief academic officer of curriculum and instruction is an appropriate position to add to our district?
CDE does not make personnel decisions.
We're not saying, hey, people, we're saying, does this fit in with our plan?
I would say that it does align with the plan. If there is a need, and I would argue there is, to continue to build out systems of improvement that aren't just instruction, right? Like we often have operational and instructional challenges we have to lift up and tighten in a system that's performing at the level we're performing at currently. And sometimes extra human capital to try to work on those things is really powerful. A lot of school districts that are even East Otero's size do utilize something like a chief academic officer or an executive director of teaching and learning to help the focus remain on instruction, even when other roadblocks may get in the way. So I think it's Garfield School District nearby, I think they have 2 district level positions. I think they're like directors of instruction or something. One of them for elementary, one of them for secondary. Another thing I'll add is positions like that are really helpful for building pipelines of instructional leaders within a school district. So number one, it adds an extra position to build capacity within schools, but also it helps to create lines of promotion that can help with organizational stability. So a lot of organizations that have a chief academic officer will often promote this chief academic officer to a superintendent later on, which is helpful because then when a board starts their superintendent search process, you're not only considering the external candidates that are out there, you also have an internal candidate who knows your district well, knows the recent improvement efforts, and can help promote organizational stability and system stability over time. So I think it can be a stabilizing mechanism. I also don't think like that it's a silver bullet. Like just because you have a CAO doesn't mean that you're automatically going to make all the improvements you need to make. You have to make sure that the right candidates are available, and that it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all your issues, but it's a strategy that's part of a larger strategy.
That was a lot. Do we have any other questions?
I think I'm good. Oh,
You've got my contact information,
Thank you.
so always great to come down. I'm sorry to wear my Bengals jersey next time. I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with East Otero. It's just, you all have great people here, and it's just I feel great every time I walk up to this school in particular. It's beautiful, great staff, and I'm really excited about what's gonna come in the future.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, and thank you.
All right.
All right,
13 grand.
It's gonna be fast.
moving on.
Yeah. Be updated.
Item
Going-
B.
All right, superintendent report.
Oh.
So,
Go ahead, read those already.
no, we can.
I could
You
jump down
know-
to 3 items.
I sent the board superintendent report this weekend. I was at a conference learning a lot about, thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
Drive safe.
A lot about school finance, and not just finance right now, but finance in the future. So there's a lot to come in that area. A lot of what I would have said, Sam said tonight, as far as an update goes, he and I will be working on the EASY grant, starting in October. And we'll have that, I think we'll have it submitted by December. It's just for the school, just for the intermediate school, it's $100,000 a year for 2.5 years. So if you receive this grant, you receive it for 2.5 years. And it's semi-competitive. And what I say, I mean, the schools that are in need, like ours is pretty much guaranteed we're gonna get the loans. So we'll be using these, again, like Sam mentioned, we'll be using this for UVA. We'll be using it for our partner that we select. Some of the money could possibly be used for strategic planning and board training. But a lot of it will go to these different direct activities that we'll be doing with the schools. So we look forward to that as well. And I think that's about it at this time. Yeah. So that'll be all, Madam Chairman.
We have questions regarding the superintendent's report?
I have a question. With the EASY grant, could that pay for or contribute partially to the chief academic officer position, since that is part of a strategic plan to help with the intermediate?
Dee, I don't think that they'll let us use it for personnel, but as soon as I get into gains, it'll tell us what we can use it for and what we can't. Also, when we're doing the application, we'll have to submit a budget for that application, and they'll either accept or deny. So I don't believe, though, Sam didn't mention to me today that it can be used for personnel.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, moving on, unfinished business.
Madam Chairman, Chair Lady, we have one revision to a policy JLCD for a second reading, and we included that was included in your packet. And I believe all we're changing is, Jill, help me here.
Just
Changing a word, I believe.
Just the paragraph title, taking out the word stock, so it reads use of opiate antagonists in an emergency situation, so there's clarification that it is an antagonist that's being used if necessary.
And so my recommendation is that we approve the revised policy JLCD, and this is the final reading.
Make a motion to approve revised policy JLCD on second and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve revised policy JLCD on the second and final reading. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. A. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Durbany, Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mrs. Leba.
Aye.
All right, new business.
Madam Chairman, Madam Chair Lady. It's so hard to say that. Chairperson, how about that?
That's okay.
Okay. we had discussed at our recent board workshop, the position of curriculum instruction position. You'll notice in the actual item, I didn't give it a title. In parentheses, it does say Chief Academic Officer. I believe when I was meeting with Darlene and Dee, and we kicked around some different names, and we seem to think that that's a good one, but this board would be at, if they want, it would be y'all's will to name that position what you might. But I just wanted to give her something that was different. I clearly heard the board that we didn't want to go into the assistant superintendent direction. And so you're quite welcome. I'm trying to compromise here. But I do think, and I heard from a lot of my fellow superintendents that this is a common term used. And I also learned, I'm learning still, as many years as I've been at this, that a lot of districts are actually moving away, and it goes to your point, Angela, that you had made at a workshop, moving away from using any other superintendent word because it can be confusing. So, I enjoyed learning that. So I kind of like that term. I think Dee likes it as well, the Chief Academic Officer. So with that, it'd be my recommendation that we hire this curriculum instruction position as we move forward.
Make a motion to approve the curriculum and instruction position.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, and a third to approve the curriculum and instruction position. Questions, comments?
Would y'all like to, my question would be to the board, would you like to go ahead and name that position instead of just, or do somebody like to discuss, do y'all like the title Chief Academic Officer?
I think I like that better than assistant superintendent. It could be shortened, as Sam said, to CAO. I already like that.
All right, very good.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. A. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Durbany,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines. Aye. Mrs. Leyva.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Now to item B.
Now, item B. We're asking to approve the Children's Literacy Center. I want to thank Ms. Durbany for sending me some questions about this. We've been paying for this program since 2021, but you're also correct. When the program began many years ago, it was paid for by a grant from the Coors Foundation. And then we went off grant in the last 3 years. We've been paying for it approximately the amount of tonight. And I will tell you that we will be, I'll be working with the gentleman that actually works with the child literacy program. And there's a grant starting in December, which is a literacy grant, and we'll be applying for that grant, which would pay for this program for at least 3 years. So
My question was, I started with it when they first began, because the lady who was the director came to me and asked me if I could work with her, and I said I would. And we were told that, you know, we didn't have to pay anything, everything was free.
right.
That they had the materials, they had the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the drawbacks was the materials. In the beginning, we were supposed to get new materials after a certain period of time, and we never did get the materials. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked at the materials, but they are very, very much outdated. Our students do not relate to the stories and the material and the vocabulary that is in. I mean, you have to really tell a story before you start the story, or they can comprehend nothing. So the volunteers, okay, so a lot of them don't even accept pay, some of them do. So we got the materials, we've got the tutors. What are we paying?
Program.
What, when you say program, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry, Darlene. I can hear Dee in my head saying, can we have a motion before we have discussion?
Oh, you asked, you.
Thank you.
I was trying, Dee, I'm working
I'm
on
sorry.
it, that's okay. So I would more than welcome discussion after a motion is made.
I'm the request.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the Children's Literacy Center tutoring program.
Second,
I have a motion and a second, and now Darlene, please continue.
Okay, what are,
Uh,
what are we paying for? That's what I'm asking.
I think that you're paying for materials again, and
We have the materials already.
and I'm sure that they use new materials every year.
They don't use materials every year because I've been involved with the program. I've been on site.
Yeah.
I've been tutoring the kids and we have not.
And
So when you
I
say
think
you
just-
just pay for the program,
Yeah.
something, there's something amiss here.
you know, they come down, they oversee the program. You know, I met with the two ladies over this particular program and they just explained it to me and the cost and that this is the cost we've been paying for 3 years.
Right, I understand that, but we don't know what we're paying for. The materials are there, they've always been there, the tutors, the personnel there has been there, and so what are we paying for?
I think they pay some, and you're correct, by the way, some of the people that help us out choose to be paid, and some of the people choose to take the volunteer hours. So I think some of the money is going to those that choose to be paid. Some of them are our senior high students, our tutors as well, some of our own students. So some of those choose to be paid. So I would imagine some of that money is going towards that program as well. Towards them being tutors as well.
So, what about the idea of the materials being so outdated?
I can talk to them. Yeah.
Students can't relate to it.
All right, I took note and I'll give them a call and just see if there's any new materials that we could possibly get.
When
Receive.
will they be?
When will they be starting?
Yeah.
Soon.
No,
This
materials,
Wednesday.
This Wednesday?
Yeah.
I mean, with the materials.
I don't know. I need to call them and ask about the materials.
So on that contract, it has where they provide 20 reusable peak reader curricular binders. So that's the same binder every year that they provide?
They've been using the same, they were old when they started, when they came down and gave them to us, and they've never been changed.
Julie or Claudia, you're all familiar?
I'm not sure about that part, but I do know there's a coordinator on site.
Right.
Every session, so I'm sure some of that is going towards her salary, and then there's an upper coordinator who coordinates for the region, I believe. They have taken on the complete role of reaching out to kids who have previously received tutoring. They're reaching out to those families, they're getting the referrals signed from parents, so that's kind of been a lift off of us.
Right.
So they're doing some of that work too, which is taking time for those coordinators, but I don't know about the resources, so I'll have to look at that too.
Please go look at them.
Yeah,
And I don't,
Claudia, please go look at them.
it is very outdated, like you say.
I know this because I worked with it for years.
The biggest thing I think with it was the overarching was building the connection with the adult, with the student. And then I know at one point in time, they said that they were supposed to be replenishing them,
Yes,
and I don't know
that never happened, yeah. I just want the best for our students, and now that we're gonna be paying money for it, it was like over $30,000, and I don't know if it's gonna increase every year, then it should be something that they really are benefiting from. And the other kind of problem I had with it was, they were referred, the students were referred, but they needed other help that this program didn't provide. I mean, this is good just for, like the little, the phonics and the reading and the practice and the rapport and all of that, but some of them had special needs that they needed to be a professional with, and they weren't getting that help. So that was why I bring it up.
also, I know that they were each of y'all's campuses 2 days a week. They're moving to 4. And I'm not sure if that 4 days a week is going to be this year or next year, but they are going to be moving to all 4 days on both campuses.
I think for me, what I would like to see is regular updates from this group about celebrations the children are making. I myself was also a tutor. I do believe that the material is outdated. Being a tutor myself, I mean, they kind of just, and it was one of the first years they came in, but they kind of just throw you in. They're like, here's your book. And yes, I can read, but I don't know how to teach somebody else to read. I mean, I have kids, but I mean, it's different. I would like to see, you know, the end of semester parent and tutor satisfaction surveys. I never did that. There's a lot of things on this list that I don't recall doing. You know, do we have a lending library? If so, where is it? Because this says that we get 100 trade books to start a lending library. You know, where is that readily accessible for any kids at either of our facilities? Because I donate books all the time. I got a lot of books for your library that I've never seen. So just making sure that this list or services we're actually getting. I mean, I'm with Darlene. I've been a tutor. I've seen what the program is about, but I think if we're gonna pay some money, let's put some accountability behind it and actually see where it's working for us or if it's not. I will agree that when I was tutoring, my student came in and they said, she can't read. She didn't want to wear her glasses. She thought it was uncool. So we wore our glasses to a tutoring session and that was all it took. That was the easiest thing I've ever done, to put on my glasses for a day. So it is a little bit of, you know, interacting with the child, but I think we need to really get serious with it. It's time to be accountable. What are they giving us? What are we putting into it? We're starting to make all these changes. Let's get with the program.
One other thing I forgot, Angela made me think of it. When the program first started, the tutors were all retired teachers. They were retired teachers, reading teachers, interventionists, professional teachers with professional teaching license. And when they saw the program and saw how they were doing it and the material, they all quit. And they all told me they quit for the same reason that I'm talking to you now. So if we're gonna do it, let's do something right and do something that's going to help our students.
The other thing they showed me was data from all the students that attend this, and we do see gains. There was no doubt about it, and they compared the students' gains from the ones that attend this tutoring program and the ones that don't, and they clearly outperform. So it works. The data shows it works.
I would love for them to share the data with the board on a regular basis, at least so we can know and feel like we're getting a return for our investment.
The first time they shared the data was when I requested it. Because I would ask when I would go at the end of the semester, how did they do when they were tested? Oh, I don't know, we haven't finished testing yet. I was always slumped on. You know, oh, we haven't finished yet. Oh, I don't know yet. We'll have to get it when we come back in January. So yeah, I'd like to see the data, like you said, on a regular basis.
This says background checks are all of our, does anybody know, we have high school kids that do that program.
That's right.
This says that the volunteers are 18 and older. We have younger kids than that tutoring, don't we?
Yeah.
So that's something to ask. I mean, I love the fact that those kids are getting involved and they want to be hands-on, but we're trying to implement something that's gonna help us grow. So I don't know if they understand the complexity of what we're trying to accomplish. I don't want it to be a free babysitting service, because I felt that way when I tutored. The kids didn't care if we were reading, they wanted to play a game, and then they wanted to go home on Thursdays. So I wanna make sure we're setting clear lines of expectations.
I have a couple questions too. So with this, is this considered then, if we have data, an evidence-based intervention?
Absolutely. And it will be data. Let me expand on that answer. We will use this as evidence at our state board hearing. And this is just another program that we're using to try to help our situation. And it is evidence-based, and it's data that we can provide to the state board as well.
Okay, well, I asked because looking up what is allowable under the Easy Grant, this would be a program that is. So I'm just curious if we've considered that for payment of this program. And then I was curious because I agree also with Angela and Darlene because I helped with setting up some of when it first came in, when we had the first coordinator, and it was run a little bit differently, but the materials aren't updated. But I'm also curious how, we have teachers and principals, I believe, that have to go through training to be able to learn how to teach kids how to read properly. So how does the way that this program teaches kids to read or to enrich that, how does that align with the way that the state is expecting teachers and principals to teach reading? Do we know that?
I don't, I would.
I think it's a really valid and good question. Just because, like she said, we all had to go through the science of reading training. A lot of that has changed, and so I think that's a valid question for us to ask them too.
Okay.
And I understand that this group, they're volunteers that are tutoring, they're providing more than just, they're not the licensed teachers, and I understand that. But there's nothing wrong with having different approaches to reaching kids so that they can be their best selves. But I am curious, how do those align? But I'm not saying that if it doesn't, that we shouldn't do it, just to be clear.
Right.
Yeah, I think from just my personal standpoint, a lot of it was just giving kids that extra exposure, like Jen's saying, with another adult that they're reading. So it's not necessarily that they're getting first best instruction, they're just getting an additional dose of support from an adult who's hopefully a good mentor for them. So it's not, I think those are valid questions, but we know that it's not their first best instruction.
Correct.
Yeah, and especially since those students are not allowed to, or you can't take students that have an IEP or do have an identified learning disability in that area.
We try not to refer those.
We haven't, but I know in the past couple of years, they've been open to taking some of them that aren't like severe needs, and so that's been really helpful. I know we have staff that stays after school to help with like tutoring or homework, help classwork, but this is a way for kids to get some extra reading with after school.
And for us, we only do first and second grade students because there is a baseline like starting point. If they can't do certain tasks, then they don't necessarily qualify for tutoring. So those kids are getting academic support in reading through us, through our intervention programs and things like that. So there is even like a baseline that they take, and there are some kids that don't qualify because they have higher needs for reading instruction than what the program can provide.
Right. Okay.
Can I say something? My daughter did this program for 2 years, and she had success with her reading. Actually, her test grades went up in that aspect. And she was, when she first started it, she was really discouraged to go. She felt embarrassed. But like after the second week, she was excited to go. And she was actively reading at home as well. So she jumped, I think it was like 2 grade levels in reading. So it was pretty impressive to see. So
Thank you.
kudos to your staff and really helped her out.
Thank you.
So we just asked them what their money is.
Do we have any other further questions or discussion regarding the Children's Literacy Center? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. A. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala,
Aye.
Mrs. Hines, Mrs. Germany, Mrs. Hines,
Aye.
Mrs. Leba.
Aye.
All right. Item C.
Item C which was the added item, is approved the access control update. I will let you know that this is all grant funded, 100%. Richie mentioned this to y'all when he did a presentation 2 months ago. That at first we did not receive the grant. And then the state called us back and said we had more money and now we did receive the grant. So we went out for bids. I've met with the gentleman that's going to provide this service. We talked about the upgrades. And my recommendation is that we approve this, the spending of this grant money for the approved access control. If y'all are wondering what that is, a lot of it has to do with the keyless entry points inside the schools. So we will be getting new hardware for keyless entry points inside the school with this grant. And the grant's very specific on what you can use it for, and this is what we can use the grant for. Richie will be overseeing the installation with this company that's going to be putting this in.
Make a motion to approve the district-wide maintenance and access control upgrade.
Second.
I have a second and a third to approve the district-wide maintenance and access control upgrade in the amount of $322,255 as presented. Question or comments?
This is for all the schools, correct?
I think a lot of the schools will be receiving these new access points. I think they're going to start with some of the older hardware and then continue. Yes.
So when we met with Richie today and he was talking about it, he said that there's other districts, what they're saying is because there are so many more devices that are coming onto the system, it's bogging the system down, and the old one Paxton isn't doing their upgrades with it. So this would go through and replace all that's in place right now. And then next year, when we go to re-up the grants, we did ask for over $1 million, but they backed it down to about 320, whatever. That hopefully then the next year, then we can do start doing more inside doors to upgrade. So it would just be like replacing what we have now at all places to the new system.
Any other questions or comments? No, ma'am. Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. Ayala.
Aye.
Mrs. S. Ayala.
Aye.
Mrs. Gervany. Aye. Mrs. Hines.
Aye.
Mrs. Leba.
Aye.
All right, moving on. Board comments. Did everybody talk
I guess,
about-
yes, I will. So this weekend coming up is Tarantula and the art project. So we have TTA will be participating in it. And so will Loma High School cheerleaders. So come on down and check it out. I think the TTA will be starting tomorrow, right? And a few other artists will be down too. So come and check it out.
Also, the junior, senior high school FFA is putting on a cornhole tournament this weekend for the Tarantula Fest. Come and sign up. I think the winner gets customized cornhole boards. That's not correct. It's customized cornhole boards. Tell them reset. Come down and do that. I just want to say that I'm pleased with all of the progress that we're making as a district. I know it's hard work, and I know you all have a very thankless job. You are appreciated. You coming and working the full day with kids and then staying for a board meeting until 8:01 p.m. is appreciated. So I know that this little stretch until we get to Christmas break is a little rough, but just hang in there, it's coming. All right, if there's nothing else.
I was a little late, but I was wondering if I could speak to you guys. I didn't know about the school board meeting. I was in contact with the representative from Shasta, and they told me to come to my local school board meeting to talk to you guys. So, I mean, I could wait till the next meeting, which I can gather a lot more information.
Let's wait till the next meeting.
Short one.
If you'll come see me, we'll see if we can get you on an agenda.
Okay, that sounds perfect, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Aaron. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you guys.
And also at the next meeting, I think some DAC representatives will be here as well. We had a DAC meeting recently. Stacy was at. So their procedures call for to come see y'all twice a year. So we're gonna fulfill those procedures.
I don't think we'll have another board meeting before homecoming.
We will not.
We have October 1st.
October 1st is a workshop with Henry. Henry Roman with.
Okay, perfect.
I want to say thank you to Dakota for running the Zoom.
Actually, Dakota's not here.
Okay, well,
Dee, I hear you, and I do want to say thank y'all as well. Y'all did a great job. This is our first time to do this, and we're gonna do, this is kind of our test drive, but we'll do a better job of getting it out on Facebook, and it'll be on our website as well, and we'll publicize a little more. So thank you guys a ton. It seemed to really work out. So
All right, if there's nothing further, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
go like
Is that my gavel?
I'll say if you don't win the FFA,